Good evening, comrades. Thank you to be here tonight. And even if the question that brings us together gives us a lot of reasons of worry. And I will begin to try and answer the question that brings us together. The question is fascism on the march in Europe? It would be a complete denial to say no. They are on the march. In France, I think it's even worse than that because they are on the march to power, specifically on the march to power. And this ongoing process is directly goes through development and structuration of a specific party that was called Front National and is called now Rassemblement National. This is the main reason why fascists are on march to power. This is their flagship. This is their strategy for now almost 50 years. They built this party to gain power. And as you probably all know, this party has sadly great results in ballot box. Tomorrow evening, when we will watch the results of French election, there is sadly a lot of chance that Rassemblement National will be the first party in the election. But they will not have power. They will not have majority, but they will have confidence, they will be strong, and in the trajectory of their results, it's quite inlining to the threats in front of us. It's more likely that they will have around 200 MPs, and it's important to know that only 4 years ago, there were less than 10. 2 years ago, there were 88, and probably tomorrow, around 200. This is a catastrophe. There is no other word. We don't need to be in denial to be hopeful, but we have to acknowledge that point. This is an expression of their power, of the way they are implanted in France right now, their audience, the way mainstream media are promoting them, and the way, and it's as well an expression of the weakness of the left on the anti-fascist front, the weakness on the left in the anti-racism front, the weakness on the left when it's time to fight against Islamophobia, when it's time to fight for solidarity with migrants. It's important to know as well that the vote for Rassemblement National right now is hegemony. In the right, this is the more regular votes in the last election. There are around 10 million people in France that vote for them, sometimes 30 million, like in the last presidential election. This is a catastrophe. And the first thing to say is the people that vote for them, they are not angry. If you are angry in France, you don't vote, or you vote for Mélenchon. If you vote for Rassemblement National right now, is that you are racist. This is the only reason that people vote for them. But it's really important to say that Rassemblement National is a fascist party. I won't have time to go back to what's the specificity of fascism, but I'm sure you all know that for fascists, elections is not the only goal. It's not the end of the story. What's the point of election for fascists? It's their way to build legitimacy, to build audience. It's their tool for building mass movements. And this is really important. Because tomorrow, when you will look at French TV, yes, they will be first in the MPs, they will be first in the parliaments. But believe me, in the streets, it's not true. We are by far, and by really far, the majority. And this is really important, believe me, when you will watch these sad results tomorrow. You have to be hopeful. It's tough. It's tough, because it's scary. It's scary as shit. But we have to keep hope, because they don't have the treat. We do have the treat, and we showed that at multiple occasions in the last year. Because the tendency of the period to solve all the contradiction with fascism is not the only tendency of the period. There is another as well, the opposite, a tendency for socialism. And the last years in France shows that potential, shows that tendency. I'm sure you all hear about the fight last year against the pension reform. Denis, my dear comrade, repeated this morning, millions of workers were striking. Millions of workers were protesting each week. A few months after this huge protest that was the biggest since 1968 in France, which shows the level of class struggle, there were huge protests against police violence in more than 500 cities. Police stations burned. Youth were fighting because working class in France is fighting. And this is the hope we have. So it's important to not be in denial. They are on the march for power, but it's important as well not to panic, to keep our compass, to be sure of our strengths and what we have to achieve in the period. So we don't panic, but there is an emergency to build back anti-fascist tradition that is sadly lost in France for now. And we will have opportunity to build such anti-fascist tradition again. Because as I said, working class is fighting, youth is fighting, but it's not the only thing to say. Because the last months were really informative for us revolutionary and give us huge hope for anti-fascism, I say, but as well anti-racism from below. We have seen different movements than here regarding solidarity with Palestine, less wide, but as I don't have another word, really hardcore. They fight really strongly against repression. The only reason right now in France, even Mélenchon had something to say for Palestine, it's not because of his politics. It's because of the streets. It's because of the youth. It's because the first day after the 7th of October, each night, young people were protesting. Even if it were forbidden, they were protesting and they imposed this movement. And this is not the only hope we have. We have hope because we are internationalists as well. And we look at what our comrades do, and they will speak about it. But I won't speak a lot about Essen, but this is the exact example that we need to reproduce. Because there is 50 years of story of Rassemblement National, Front National. And there is a short period where we almost killed them. It was between 1995 and 200. And this was a specific combination of class struggles, the huge protest against pension reform in 1995, a combination with that with huge protests against racism. This is the period, the last time we stopped the racist law was at that time. But that was not enough. What we did I was too young to do it, but I think we did it. We had an element to that. We had a specific anti-fascist response, exactly the same as our dear comrade in Germany did in Essen. It was in Strasbourg. Rassemblement National had a meeting, and in front of this meeting, 50,000 people fought, protested. And in front of this anti-fascist protest, Front National almost collapsed because they couldn't keep what's the tension in every fascist movement, the tension between electoral and the tension with mass movement in the streets. They couldn't keep that. So we have to do it again, and we know how, and our comrades showed us the way, and we will win it.
Yeah, comrades, the meeting is called Is Fascism on the Rise in Europe? And if you look at the European elections, you have to say, yes, it is. The AfD won 5% and came out with 16% in the European election, even though they had to hide their two top candidates because of their links to the Russian and the Chinese regime, because of one of them, Maximilian Krah, was arguing that not all SS men were criminals, and for this reason, even Marine Le Pen kicked them out of the parliamentary group Identity and Democracy and the European Parliament, even though they won 16%. It is important to understand that the AfD developed over the last 10 years from a right-wing party with a fascist wing to a party which is fascist in its core. And so it's important to see that we have to ask, why is it? Why could they win? And what can we do to beat them? And I think the experience we made is very important, but there's still a far way to go. First of all, about the background. There is this huge frustration in society with the government. And there's a lot of worries about social decline, and this is one of the factors that help the AfD to grow and to exploit this fear. The second point is that racism is not only with the AfD, but not only the conservatives, even the social democrats used racism to try to win votes in the elections. I'll give you two examples. One, the conservative politician demanded to deport Ukrainians without jobs, which is really disgusting. Then we had, shortly before the European election, there was an incident, a man from Afghanistan stabbed an Islamophobic rally, killing a policeman. And then there was this huge debate a couple of days before the European election to have the party conference at all. But it shows the potential we have, and that we have to continue to build from the bottom the protests against the AfD, the conferences, the stalls, their meetings, and to show that they might win elections now. And it looks like they will win some elections in the eastern part of Germany, but that we are still the majority, and that we can mobilize, that we can block them, and that we can win against them on the streets. This is a picture from the mass demonstrations which took place on that day. And I'll show you another picture, which is very important. You see one placard of the campaign Aufstieg gegen Rassismus, who was over the last year the only organization nationally that was consequently arguing the threat of the AfD turning into a fascist party. And Björn Höcke, that is the name, he's a secret leader, the fascist from Thuringia, who is in a way, he's a secret leader. He's not on the front of the AfD nationally at the moment, but he's bringing his supporters to the front, and he really is an open fascist. And so this is one placard, and you see the placard we brought also there, united against racism and repression, save Gaza, because we argued it's important that even though this is a united front, which is not agreeing on the issue of Palestine, but that we raise the voices of Palestinian resistance also in this demonstration as revolutionary organization. I think it is important that we now take on and to continue the fight against the AfD. I told you about the elections taking place in some of the some regions of Eastern Germany, and in some parts of Germany, the AfD is made openly to fascists who mobilize on the streets, and it is already is a threat to people, to migrant people, to natural people, and to all people who don't fit into the worldview of the AfD. So we have to continue this fight, and this is a big task we have. And I brought you, this is the last, a chant from Germany, and you can joining. And the first one is, Höcke ist ein Faschist. Höcke is a fascist, what? And the second one is all together against fascism. So joining the chants, I hope that you can hear them. That's what I did. By your says, Höcke is fine about says. Whoever get a face, can you only dice when it's on the child that is a bit even to watch this for on the survivor. Here it we watched the book. He's not out here and Denis are showing the power.
Offering our solidarity to our French and German comrades. For a kid to feel their demonstrations, but it takes enormous courage to stand up against the size of the organisation that's inside France and Germany, and to say that you're not going to give up. And it's important that we start from a couple of things that are happening today about the rise of fascism and racism inside Europe. Firstly, it's the ruling class that's opening the door to these people. Yeah. Because if you read the FT over the last 2 weeks, one of the things that's supposed to happen is our betters are told that they know how to run society. And with the rise of the vote of the RN, one of the things that's happened is both the Economist and the Financial Times, so the ruling classes over there had a choice. They said either marry or murder the movement. And they've decided to marry the movement. They've said we can live with it. They've used the example of what's happening inside Italy to say something called cohabitation. And this is important because before there was an acceptance inside that there was a cordon sanitaire around far right, that they didn't belong. They were not a normal organisation. And we have to still say that that's important because one of the reasons why we have to talk about the growth of the far right is because the level of state racism opening the door to the far right. And that's why racism has played an important part. The other thing about the fascists, because there's been both said, they have two wings, an electoral wing and a street wing. And we have to, sometimes, last week I was rang, and people said to me, I'm planning on packing and going to Jamaica, because I think we have to give up on Europe. I opted for a ticket as well, I had a bit of a request. But nevertheless, the point is, it is not 1933. It is not, it's true, it's a dangerous time, but it's not that time. Because let's be clear about Hitler. Hitler was also a comedian. You know, he changed according to different circumstances there. But he had 400,000 stormtroopers. He had the streets as well. He had the ability to be able to do that. I'm going to shamelessly plug the question of the 27th about why it's important that you do see 4 million votes for reform, but they still haven't got the question in the streets. And the same thing is inside Germany and France. When you say to these people, look at Marine Le Pen, she spent many, many years trying to normalize the fascists in that way. And actually, I know I'm going to do an old manism, but I'm old enough to remember a man called Mitterrand, Francois Mitterrand. If you want to understand how Le Pen got the first back force, it's because Francois Mitterrand said, I'm really clever. I'm going to put the Nazi on the platform, it will split the right vote, and then what it will mean is I'll be able to dominate ideologically in France. And what that tells you is, if you open the door to fascists, if you give them 1 inch, they'll take a mile. They'll take a mile. And I'm talking about the father, sorry, since I was older, I'm not seeing on yet. Let them abide in. But I'm trying to say to you that what he did, the Nazis had less than 1%, and he gave them a platform. And that platform is what they've used relentlessly in order to build. And therefore, we've always got to deny them the ability to be able to organize. And that's why it's so important that people come out in the streets. And the question of the United Front. Read Trotsky about the rise of the United Front. It's an amazing book. The only thing is that Trotsky had 68 supporters in Europe. Now, I think we've got more than 68 supporters inside Europe, and we've got more of a plan about what we want to do. And actually, in 1933, the other thing about the fascists, even in the 1920s and the 1930s, were a relatively new movement. So the problem for the fascists is that if they're exposed as fascists, they even deny that they're fascists. I'm not a Nazi. They deny it. So we have to expose them as that, in a way, because they deny their roots. And partly that will split the people that are around us. I read the autobiography of a man called Pastor Nemella. I don't know if you've heard the poem, didn't you? First they came to the communists, wherever he is. Read his history, it's quite interesting. Because actually he was an anti-Semitic preacher, if you read it. It's only afterwards, when they locked him up, that he realized that the Nazis were a danger. But actually we've been forewarned, haven't we, about what we're trying to do. This is important, because they've got history, there's a chance to expose and push them back. So with the electoral question, we've seen it here, not in the same scale. I mean, the BNP got 1 million votes, where they suddenly have this surge and they look overwhelming. And I think it's very important that in their growth, that they infer despair to us and try and break us down. But I think we have to understand that each step that they take, they're on a perilous verge message themselves, because what they're trying to do is smash the bourgeois state. And in order to smash the bourgeois state takes an enormous amount of energy. And by the way, they never really managed it. The power was always handed to them. Mussolini didn't march on Rome, he got on the train and was welcomed by Victor Emmanuel. We shouldn't forget that. Hindenburg handed power to Hitler. He didn't get it in the way that he was in that way. It's not automatic that these people can get into these positions and been able to do that. I just want to quickly say that one of the things about what's taking place with the far right now is also far-right populists or racist populists. It's like Nigel Farage is not the same as these people. He's more like the Tea Party in America, where he's attempting to take over. You know, he says he doesn't want to take over the Tory party. He's a liar. Everything he says is a lie. Of course he wants to take over the Tory party and present himself as a leader. But one of the things he has to do, in some ways, that's the reason why he's always cozied up to the question of the people inside Europe. One of our jobs is to expose him in the same way what the people did when they stormed the press conference. That went all over the world. And we're in an organisation, every 2 weeks, all the comrades from Europe meet up to discuss our collective miseries. Like I said, we to discuss, oh my God, the FPO, they've done this now. They've got into this power, whatever it is. But I do think the one thing that's coming out of that is a question of international solidarity. I think it's very, very important that when we've got to remember the strategy works. Petros can't be here today because they've got their Marxism. But do you remember when Golden Dawn had reached a point inside Greece and an economic collapse that took place in Greece? What did people tell us? People told us that they were unstoppable. People said that they weren't going to be able to be stopped. And what we have to remember is Golden Dawn got smashed by the same method. They were exposed by relentless demonstrations. And one of the things about the relentless demonstrations, about all of us when we're trying to build a united front, is the concrete nature of where it is. We are not majority organisations in any of our countries. We do not have the majority. We're a minority. Even in Britain, the TUC and bits of the Labour Party, bits of the Muslim organisations have a dominant role in stand-up to racism. But we are admonished in one important sense, that we understand the fascists and the Nazis, and we have a theory of understanding the difference between the racist populists, the people that are trying to build street armies, the people that are trying to build a fascist organisation. And I think, to be honest with you, I'm going to end up on this, comrades. Each generation faces a test. Each generation faces the question when you see the rise of fascism, when you see them actually start to grow, about how they're going to be stopped. I think this is our test. And we're aided by a tremendous movement against Palestine that exposes the contradictions within the system. But also the fact that they're not able to come with an easy answer. It matters that a minority of people voted for people like Jeremy Corbyn and the other 5 people. And this is the question of the left. I tell you what's the difference between now and before. Before you could simply, in the 1970s, say, stop the National Front, and people would probably vote Labour. Even in the 80s and 90s, you could say, stop the BNP, and then you can vote Labour. Today, I think you have to have a bigger answer to the problems that people face. And it's a much more deeper question. And so part of the question about building and defeating the fascists is also raising the question of a socialist alternative within that debate, as part of when we do the fight. When we have the marches, for Palestine, we have to raise the question of fascism. When we raise the question of fascism, we have to raise the question of Palestine and what's happening to the people. We also have to have the question about how you bring those two together. I've run out of time to go through it, but I'm going to have to shut up because there's the time. But I want to say that building the united front is the real test of revolutionary politics. It's a real test of how you apply how the theory to the practice. And I'll end up on this point for all of us. Internationally, it was Tony Cliff, a Palestinian Jew from the Middle East, that carried on the tradition from Trotsky, that shared it with us theoretically, that combined both the fight against racism and fascism, and brought that tradition of internationalism in the struggle that we've got. We have a duty to smash the fascists because of what they've done in the past, but we also have the duty to build a revolutionary party that brings both clarity and activity to the struggles that we face. And in that way, we have a chance to destroy the spectre of fascism and Nazis growing in Europe. I'll stop there.
We'll take to the camera that asked the necessary but painful question, why they are on the rise. It's difficult. For me, it's not, the metaphor is not mine, but I think it's quite useful to answer the question. Fascists are like rats, and they breed in sewers. And as long as there are sewers, we will have rats. And the sewers are capitalism. And it's sad, but as long as we will have, as the ruling system will be capitalism, we will have to fight fascism. That's why I like the term tradition when we talk about fascism, when we talk about anti-fascism, sorry. It has to be a tradition, deeply rooted in the working class. Because as long as we will be in capitalism, we will have to fight them. They said with racism, nationalism, but they will be there as long as there is capitalism. And this is why we have to build back tradition. And the other answer is we didn't fight them properly, actually, in France. It has to be said like that. We didn't fight them properly. And that's why it's really important when Weyman said that I think the tradition of the tendency that brings us together is not that common. To put at the center of a revolutionary tendency the fight against racism and fascism, and this is really key in those moments, as long as we believe that they will not live as long as the ruling system is capitalism. And just to say, thank you for all the solidarity. And I think the best way to show it is just really keep Tommy Robinson really hard, really hard. Get hard well, and believe the arguments so that day to all the working class in the world, to all the working class in Europe, how we treat fascists, how we fight them, how we specifically fight them differently than the rest of the struggle we need. And this is an example, as they said, we need to tell to anyone. We need them in France. This is the kind of example. So keep Tommy Robinson really hard. Tell to everyone that is worried about France that the best way to fight Le Pen when we live here is to kick Robinson out. Please do that. Do that with lots of people, and we will watch you.
Yeah, I also wanted to start with the question why the fascists are so strong, and I just want to add one argument. I think it's important to say that the failure of the left is paid by the left and like the victims of the fascists, and it's a very concrete thing I wanted to say. I think the left in Germany leaves a lot of space for the AfD. For example, the AfD was able to position itself as peace party because it's like pro-Russian, and they have freedom, peace on their posters. And the left party avoids like controversial topics like Ukraine and Palestine, and so hides away from these arguments. And so I think this makes it easy for the AfD to win votes. At the same time, the broader left didn't understand for a long time that the AfD is the central threat to all of us, and they were underestimating. And so this was Aufstehen gegen Rassismus argued for years, and argued with people and on the left, in the trade unions and elsewhere, that we have to fight the AfD, which was developing from a monetary party with a fascist wing to now a fascist party in its core. And so I think it's very important to understand that the tactic of the United Front, it has two sides. We have to build as broad as possible alliances to confront the fascists. And so we were relying on the experiences we made in the last years. For example, in Dresden, a city in eastern Germany, there was a successful mass blockade and a neo-Nazi march more than 10 years ago. And this experience is was demonstrated out by comrades or ex-comrades also from March 21, from us, from others on the radical left. And this experience was fed into the preparation of the anti-AFD protest. So we have to take the experience, we have to link it to the current analysis of the situation, and we have to organize. At the same time, I think it's important as revolutionists, we are in a minority, and to be honest, we are much more in a minority than you are here at Bristol. We, at the same time, it's important to understand that we have to have the freedom of propaganda and to argue. We have broad analysis. We have people with different political views and ideas in the movement, and this is okay. At the same time, we have to argue in the controversial topic: what is the origin of fascism? Why do we need a socialist society? Why it is important to link the issue of anti-fascism with the imperialism and the issue of Palestine? We have to raise our flags, and this is very important. With this, I think the way how we can unite to confront the fascists and defeat that, and at the same time to strengthen our forces as revolutionaries to fight not only the fascists but also the capitalist system.
The question was asked at the beginning: why do fascists and racists find it easier for their arguments? The argument, one of the reasons Marx said that the ruling ideas in any society are the ideas of the ruling class. And actually, there's two sets of ideas. There's good sense and common sense. And actually, to be honest, shitty ideas are easier to sell. That's the truth of it. Do you mean? If you tried to, it's the fascists and the racists and the politics of despair and the politics of hope are placed on resistance. And sometimes resistance goes up and down. And so therefore, it's not just in Britain that people are despairing. They're despairing in Germany, in France. Their lives have been made worse. The question is, do you punch down or do you punch up? And we need the confidence in order to do that. I haven't got time to talk about Italy. Please read Mark Thomas's article on there. Read Judith Hall's article that goes through what's going on in France and whatever it is, and Paul Aubrey and Christina's article and Denis' article about France in that way. So I haven't got time to just go through how that's being built up, but I think we should arm ourselves with those arguments. The other thing I want to say is about the Great Replacement theory. The Great Replacement theory is anti-Semitic and racist and Islamophobic all at the same time. It's the heart of what they're trying, for the argument they're trying to do. The other thing about fascism, Nazi Mussolini didn't need racism, but the Nazis do. You know, they did fundamentally need it in terms of holding it together. What's the difference between the fascists and the Nazis? The Nazis have to smash advanced capitalist society. They may get those votes, but the other thing that we've got is the organised working class. It is the bulwark that stopped them from easily getting through. Anybody, I remember the EDL trying to get their trains to Tower Hamlets, yeah? And the train workers got off and left the trains in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Remember, train driver told me we were the only ones who knew how to cross the tracks without getting electrocuted. The thing is, before it was they could have tried. So it's the combination. It's not just that they get the votes. It's the question of the power of society, unleashing that power, whether on demonstrations or anything. The Arditi del Popolo, inside Italy, signed a peace treaty with Mussolini, the fascist, at the time when he felt defeated. They should never have done that. They should have never done that. They should have shot the fascists. Yeah. Any chance you get to destroy and annihilate the Nazis, annihilate them. And the reason why it's important that we understand that is that they've grown from the streets. Hitler said, I would have been stopped if I'd been stopped when I was small. And if that's the most important lesson, you have to break them when they're small. That's the reason why we have this, our international duty to smash up Tommy Robinson. Now, to be honest with you, it's a bit of a kind of tradition now, isn't it? Whether it's milkshakes or breaking up the EDL or breaking up the football ladder match, we have done it before. I'm sorry that Paul Harbour didn't get in, because he had told us about how they smashed the National Front. So we have a tradition and we have a method. Let's apply that method in Dollops. In many times, in order to get them to be destroyed, and I'll put it out this way, the only greatly political theory that we want to put in is the replacement of the ruling class with our own class.